Hey everyone, welcome back to Launch Codes Football. My name is Chris,
And I'm Chelsea.
and today we're going to be recapping the Super Bowl and honestly, the very crazy and odd outcome that I don't think many of us expected. We're going to be covering what happened to the Chiefs and also give a few offseason updates with Russell Wilson and kind of what's going on with that situation over in Seattle. A very interesting situation could be brewing over there. And then we're going to go through our hot take. So let's get into it. All right, Chelsea, do you want to start us off with our Super Bowl recap?
Yeah, let's talk about that game. First of all, I want to precursor this with saying that Chris picked the Bucks to win this game. I picked the Chiefs. Good job, Chris. You're doing good. Man, this game was just sad. I sat on the couch the whole night and I was just sad, man. But I don't know about you, but watching that game, Patrick Mahomes just looks sad. Like, I really wonder if there was something else going on with him outside of his turf toe. Just like every time he walked out of the huddle, he was just like sad. And then he went to the sideline, he was sad. He just looked sad. I don't know what the deal was. But I mean, obviously Chris ended up being more right than he thought he'd be about the offensive line and the defensive line for the Chiefs and the Bucks. As you guys remember, we talked about that matchup last week. We talked about the O line of the Chiefs, the D line of the Bucks as our first key matchup, and then we talked about the secondary versus the Chiefs receivers, right, as the second primary matchup. Obviously, the D line and the O line situation influenced the secondary and receiver situation, right? But Mahomes had absolutely no offensive help this whole game. They did not even score 10 points. 10 points. Patrick Mahomes dropped 9 points on the Bucks. That's probably the last time I'll ever say that in my life. But this poor guy, not only did he have both of his starting tackles out, he also had a starter out. I think it's Laurent Tardif. I know his last name is the last part of his hyphenated last name is Tardif, but he is a doctor, right? And he opted out of the season before it started to go back to where he's from in Canada to help with COVID. So they didn't have him to begin with. They lost both their starting tackles. And as all Panthers are going to relish me saying, and as I heard from all of the Panthers fans I watched this game with, all two of them, Mike Remmers was put into this game. And Mike Remmers was very bad in this game. Yes, he was playing out of position. Yes, he is a backup. And yes, he was very bad. I'm so sorry, Mike. Patrick Mahomes ran for 497 yards trying to avoid sacks on what essentially looked like every play. He had no help, absolutely no help. No tight end blocking, no running back blocking, no O-line blocking. Even their starters played bad. It was just unfathomable to me. He was pressured on 29 of 56 dropbacks, which is more than any other quarterback in Super Bowl history. Side note, even though Cam Newton was pressured a lot of the time in his Super Bowl appearance a few years ago, he was only pressured 21 times, but he was hit 13 to 21. So he got hit way more than Mahomes did, but Mahomes was pressured way more than Cam Newton was in his Super Bowl. He was hit 8 times, Mahomes was, and he was sacked 3 times in the Super Bowl, which is not a good look for the Chiefs O line. I mean, I get that they had 3 starters out, but you're playing in the Super Bowl. Like, double team them or something. But kind of on other notes, the Chiefs had several key drops from not only more minor players on their offense, but also from Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Which, if you know anything about the Chiefs, that is extremely surprising. I mean, Travis Kelce has some of the surest hands in the NFL, and Tyreek normally doesn't have to worry about not catching balls because by the time he catches it, he's already in the end zone, right? So the fact that he not only had no O line help, his top receivers couldn't seem to catch the ball. He ran for almost 500 yards away from Tampa Bay defenders. I mean, if anyone tries to fault Mahomes in this game, come on, man. Like, obviously, falls everywhere. Not all of the fault is just going to fall on one position or one player or one side of the ball. So, I mean, you can definitely fault Mahomes for some things. He made some not great throws and he held onto the ball for way too long, right? Because he was trying to make something happen. So, you can definitely blame him. But if you're going to blame anyone, you have to blame this anemic offense. And it all starts with the O line, just like you said, Chris. I mean, Mahomes played his guts out. And if he had had an O line, this game would have been way more competitive for real.
I agree. I mean, the offensive line really, in my opinion, let down the Chiefs because, I mean, if you look at every play, it felt like Mahomes was running for his life, trying to make something happen. And even on those wild throws he was making off balance in the air, sideways, he was still making the throws, but he just wasn't quite like they weren't catching them too.
You
A
know that
couple.
Superman throw where he
Mhm.
spread like full capacity. He was like 9 feet. Like he was
It,
like on the ground and he like threw it on the other side of his body while he was outstretched like a foot above the field. Like who else in the league is going to do that except maybe Lamar Jackson? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I just really thought with this game, like Mahomes, like his receivers, I think what was really happening was like things were just not going well for the Chiefs. And there's a lot of people, and I believe even the Chiefs believe this in themselves that they can come back from this. They have been down in games before. They can do it again, is probably what their thought was. But my dad the whole time was saying, eventually being down is going to hurt you. And in this game, yeah, being down did not help their chances. The Chiefs defense by the end looked gassed and not good, but I would say that they were doing their job in the first half overall. Let's talk a little bit about the refs, or like some of the flags
Oi.
getting called. So I'll say my opinion on this first, and then Chelsea, you can go. A lot of people were saying this game was rigged for Tampa. I don't believe that. I think the Chiefs honestly were holding a lot of the time. I mean, there was even one play. Chiefs fans may disagree with me, but there was one play where the Chiefs defender tripped Chris Godwin on a deep pass near the end zone. And some people say, well, it wasn't catchable. To me, it looked very catchable. Godwin was intentionally tripped because the Chiefs defensive back was beaten. And then there was another time where Tampa kicked a field goal, but the Chiefs lined up off sides, and then it gave Tampa, I think that's gave them one of their touchdowns. So I personally think that while some calls were questionable, like I think the one near the end of the first half where they called pass interference in the end zone because Tom threw up a pass, and to me that one didn't look catchable, and I would say that one might have been that wasn't a great call. It did feel like that first half they were calling very touchy fouls, but then like in the second half that kind of stopped. I don't know. But I'm not like some people who think this game was entirely rigged and refs were only on Tampa's side. I really think the Chiefs defense was holding a lot of times, and they like, because we have to look at it this way. Tampa's defensive line, there were a bunch of monsters out there, and
Yep.
the Chiefs offensive line was just not very good comparatively. So in order to hold against that Tampa line, they would have to hold the defenders, which is just a good play on the defensive line for Tampa if you're forcing the other team's offensive line to hold you. So in my opinion, like that's what I was seeing. There were definitely some questionable calls. I can't deny that. Um, but I don't think this game was like as unfair in the first half as some people thought it was. And even in the second half, you saw like there was a pass that Tom Brady threw up to Gronkowski. Gronkowski was slapped across the arms way before the ball got there, and they didn't give that to him. And so I was like, maybe that was a bit of a makeup call. Who knows? But, I was like, this is, I don't think it was as one side as people thought. I just think that the Chiefs defense and their offensive line were really holding, and that they were fair penalties for the most part.
Yeah, so right, the Colts side of me has to say first that obviously the game was rigged for Tom Brady. No, I'm just kidding. As much as I want to say that, and as much as the Colts fan within me is saying Tom cheated, he probably didn't. So let's look at this objectively instead of from my super fan brain, right? I'd say about half of these calls were right. There were some really dumb calls in this game. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of an article that I wrote for the newspaper in college, and I titled it "The Referees Are Clowning the NFL." And that's kind of how I felt in this game. There were bad calls not only on the Chiefs, but also on the Bucks. Like I said, I'd say about half of them were accurate. Half of them that they called, the kind that could or could not have been called. Like, if you're going to call those penalties, you have to call that whenever it happens, right? If you're going to be nitpicky, you have to be nitpicky the whole game, right? You just can't call it on one player or on one team the whole game. Like, if someone barely touches someone and you call it, sure, whatever. But if that happens on the other side of the ball, you better call it for the other team too. Because if you don't, that's kind of dumb. So, like I said, I mean, I was watching this game and there were some penalties. I was like, come on, that's just stupid. And there were some that I was like, come on, you're being stupid. You know, I think that there's a difference. But no, I don't think that the game was rigged. I do think Tom Brady is friends with like every referee in the NFL, but I don't think that it was outwardly rigged, obviously. And I mean, let's just be honest, the Chiefs got outplayed. I mean, you can pin the blame on the refs, and yes, the refs influenced the game, and yes, they made some bad calls, but the refs didn't score 9 points. The Chiefs did. So,
I agree. I think the Chiefs, I think it's odd. Like, I think their defense had a good first half of,
they did.
up to a point. Like, they held Tampa at the 1 yard line. That's impressive. They held, I think it was Ronald Jones tried to run it in and he didn't get
Yeah,
it.
that
I
was
was
good.
like, and I thought that was a really good stand for them. And then the Chiefs offense came out and didn't do anything. I think that was the drive where Travis Kelce had a big drop. Now,
Yep.
Travis Kelce actually had a good game this game. He was probably the Chiefs player. On the Chiefs, he was their best offensive player. He had over 100 yards receiving, and he played well after his drop. But that one drop ended up being a huge one because it was a drive killer. So
Yeah. I mean, I
honestly,
think go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I think the Chiefs defense, they weren't going to lock down Tampa, and they had been playing well recently. But I guess, I mean, I think they eventually just got tired. I mean, they were out there for so long, and Tampa was able to just run them over with Leonard Fournette, who had a great game for Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to make the point of obviously blame gets spread around everyone on the Chiefs, right? It's not just the offense, it's not just the defense, it's not just the coaching or Mahomes or the line, it's everyone because it's a team sport. But I will say, I think if you're going to fault one side of the ball more than the other, you're going to fault the offense. Because the only reason, or one of the only reasons, that the defense started playing bad in the second half is because they were out there the whole game. Like, they're going to get tired. And, like, yeah, they're professionals. And, yeah, their stamina levels are, like, out the roof. And, yeah, they're really great athletes. But you stay on the field for 20 minutes. I mean, you're going to get tired. And that wouldn't have happened if the O-line and the offense would have been able to produce not only points, but yards, eat away some clock, and keep the defense off the field. I mean, obviously, you can blame the defense for giving up the amount of points that they did because they shouldn't have. You're in the Super Bowl, don't give up that many points, right? But they wouldn't have been out there for nearly as long if the offense would have been able to do literally anything. And they just couldn't. Yeah. I mean, they were choosing to kick field goals over scoring touchdowns. And I was watching the game and I was like, you were not going to win this game by kicking 3 field goals. Like, either go for it and win or die by it. Like, field goals are not going to have you beat Tom Brady. Like, you're either going to die or you're going to live by the touchdown. And it is what it is. And, Andy Reid opted to go conservative because he figured any points he could get against the Bucks were points that he wanted, which, like, I get that. But if you're down 3 scores, don't kick a field goal. In the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I can see the point there because there was one point where in the second half he was kicking a field goal, and I know a lot of fans kind of were questioning, well, why? But I think at that point he wanted to try and get some points on the board and hopefully get a defensive stop. But no, I see what you mean. Overall,
I think if you're gonna, I think if you're gonna hedge your bets on either the Chiefs' defense stopping Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes stomping your defense, I don't know about you, but I would take Patrick Mahomes against a defense over Tom Brady against your defense any day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd
I
rather go against Patrick Mahomes than Tom Brady. Like, yeah,
hmm
Tom Brady's significantly older and significantly less mobile, but he's still Tom Brady. He's still
hmm
the greatest quarterback ever. Like, any coach that is like, yes, we can hold Tom Brady, and they say it with absolute certainty, like, really?
But really, like, even though the Chiefs didn't play well, in my opinion, like the Super Bowl MVP was the entire Tampa's defense. The entirety of their defense played so well. I mean, when was the last time somebody didn't put up a touchdown in a Super Bowl? Like I
I
can't
couldn't
even
even
think of
tell
one.
you.
Like that was impressive. Like, and I know we talk about like the Super Bowl 50 Denver Broncos defense. Even they gave up a touchdown. Now they didn't give up many points, and it was still a fantastic defensive performance. But we look at this game. I mean, Tampa's defense was all over Tyreek Hill, even Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's like normal catches that he was making 5-6 yard outs were even covered as tightly as they could be. He was just able to play well and catch the ball against them. But I mean, that defensive line wrecked through the Chiefs offensive line, and that secondary played really well.
They ended up having all their starters for the game,
Yeah,
like
and
we
I
talked about,
mean,
and it made a difference.
and also I know every Steelers fan that's listening to this, I know you probably hated seeing Antonio Brown catch a touchdown pass
From
in
Tom
the Super
Brady
Bowl. Oh,
in
from
the
Tom
Super Bowl.
Brady. I feel like that's just like the nightmare
Salt in the
scenario.
wound.
Mm. But overall, this game, it was a surprising end to me. I know I picked the Bucks. I still thought the Chiefs were probably the favorite to win it, but I picked them because I didn't want to count Tom Brady out. But I think everyone's surprised to see the outcome of, I mean, just how bad this was.
Yeah, I mean, you know those memes of the goat, Tom Brady, and baby goat, right? He says like a baby on his shoulders, and they Photoshop Patrick Mahomes' face on it. It's like the goat and the baby goat. I don't know if anyone's calling Patrick Mahomes the baby goat at this point because he got absolutely dismantled. And a lot of it wasn't his fault, but it's going to be really hard for him to break Tom Brady's Super Bowl winning record at this
Mhm.
point. I mean, he already has one. Only 6 more to go, Pat. You got it.
Yeah. I mean,
Or
we'll
7
see.
if you technically want to break it.
We'll see. I mean, right now Brady's holding that repeat over Mahomes right now. And I think Mahomes eventually will be in that topic, but right now it's just going to
Oh, I
take a
agree.
while. I think some people were jumping the gun a little bit too early because, yes, like his talents are like you see he has the potential to get there. I think anybody who says he doesn't have that, I'm like, you're being ridiculous. He obviously does. This was his first bad game in his NFL career, in my opinion. So it happens. The question is, can he bounce back from this? Is he going to be, is he going to be the same as he was, or is he going to regress? And that's what we'll really have to see. This next year, in my opinion, is going to be huge for Mahomes and the Chiefs as a whole.
To
But
be fair, his toe was also bothering him because he had
exactly.
turf toe. And
Mhm.
I think he got surgery yesterday. So hopefully he won't have to deal with that anymore. It'll be
Mhm.
interesting to see who departs from the Chiefs in free agency, if anyone, and if they go out and sign anyone. Because if they have a completely healthy roster, they don't need anyone, really, outside of depth. Like if they had a completely healthy O line, they don't need O line. If they had, a completely healthy secondary, they don't need secondary. But the thing is, I think that this game really uncovered that the Chiefs have poured all of their money into their starters and they have no depth. And if they get injured, they're screwed. So if I'm Andy Reid, I'm looking at this game and I'm going and signing like 5 linemen for $2 million a year because you got to have someone competent behind the starters, someone who can go out there and perform in the biggest games. I mean, like I said, if this game exposed anything about the Chiefs, is that they have no depth. And that's a problem,
Unless
especially if
it's
you're
at
trying to
running
beat Tom
back.
Brady.
Unless it's at running back, they have plenty of
Unless
depth
it's at
there.
running back.
But
But O line, they don't. I mean, you look at some of their defensive depth. I mean, their starters are really good. But I mean, once you get to like fourth or fifth string, like, you know, they're
and
not names
quarterback with
anyone
Chad
knows.
Henne.
Oh yeah, I mean they're totally set at quarterback depth. Chad Henne is the GOAT, obviously.
I mean, he led them to a playoff win.
I mean, he did. One could argue he's technically better than Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, think about it. Think about this equation here, right? Tony Romo had like 2 playoff wins his whole career. Chad Henne has at least one that he's played in the game and made it through and won. So obviously, Chad Henne better than Tony Romo.
Oh, obviously. You just rub salt in the Cowboys' wounds, why don't you? Any Cowboys fans listening to this, you're probably real salty right now. I apologize.
I am kidding.
I mean, but like, he's not wrong.
Yikes. Okay, that's another hot take topic for another day. But I'm not about to get into that with a Cowboys fan. But
we love you, Cowboys fans.
Yes, we
Hopefully
do.
Dak resigns. If he doesn't, I would hope that Jerry Jones gets kicked off of his yacht and gets fired, because that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But as a Colts fan, I will willingly and lovingly take Dak Prescott off your hands if you don't re-sign him. Just putting that out there.
Fair enough. All right, so let's get into the off-season update that we've had recently with Mr. Russell Wilson. So he's reportedly kind of unhappy with the team. He was in a interview on the Dan Patrick Show recently, and I'll read the quote that he said. What he said. So he said, like any player, you never want to get hit. Wilson told reporters via Zoom. That's the reality of playing this position. Ask any quarterback who wants to play this game. But at the same time, it's part of the job and everything else. I think that the reality is that I've definitely been hit. I've been sacked almost 400 times, so we've got to get better. I've got to find ways to get better too. Then he was asked if he's frustrated with the Seahawks, and then Wilson said with a laugh, I'm frustrated about getting hit too much. I'm frustrated with that part of it. At the end of the day, you want to win. So I don't think he's really mad at the Seahawks in this quote, because I mean, even said when he was frustrated, he laughed. He kind of chuckled as he was saying what he was. And so I think what he's saying here is fair. There are a lot of people who think he's going to be on the trade block, which is why we're even bringing this up. If the Seahawks trade Russell Wilson, I would be
They're dumb.
shocked. I'd question a lot of their decisions. It'd be great for, us fans being able to see him where he would go. Like, honestly, like if he got traded, I wouldn't be mad. I'd be like, cool, now we get to see more, more drama for trade drama. So I'm up for that. But as far as like if he's actually gonna get traded, I don't think this is a cry for help, like I want to leave. I think this is telling the Seahawks management, though, that, hey, I'm getting hit a lot. And he admitted like he holds on to it too long and tries to look for a play, which is fine. That's who Russell Wilson is, and that's what you expect from him. But he's been sacked over almost 400 times. He was the third most sacked quarterback this year with 47 times. And the Seahawks were good. It wasn't like they were just some bum team. They were a good team. And he was third most in the league, just behind Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz, who are not on good teams this year. So I think it's interesting. Also, reportedly, multiple teams have called asking about trading for Russell Wilson.
I mean, wouldn't you?
I'd call. There's no harm in just giving up a call and saying, hey, Pete, what you want for Wilson, or whoever they're calling.
I want 17 first-round picks.
I mean, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. This is an interesting thing for him to say, but I also can't blame him. Look, the offensive line for Seattle, ever since they've like kind of ended their Super Bowl run of 2 years in a row, they really haven't been that they haven't looked that good. Like their offensive line has been rough. It used to be back in the day, Russell Wilson was able to stay in the pocket what felt like 15 seconds and just stay there all day and have time to throw. But now I feel like ever since then, it's really his offensive line has not been that great to him. So I don't know, Chelsea, do you think this is a legitimate trade that could happen this offseason?
See the dramatic trade deadline part of me is going, yes, I love when these things happen. But let's be honest, if the Seahawks traded away Russell Wilson, that might be the dumbest decision they've made in franchise history. Like, Russell Wilson is a top 5 quarterback. He's elite. He leads the team. I'm pretty sure he's a captain. He, influences pretty much every major decision on this team as it pertains to him. I'm presuming, considering how much money he gets paid and how much he's respected. I mean, he just won the Walter Man of the Year award. Like, congrats to him. Like, dude's out here doing awesome things. He's an awesome player, awesome guy. If they traded him, that would be utter insanity. It just would be. That would be insane. I mean, I can't imagine. We've seen what Russell Wilson can do with a bad line. And let's be honest, he didn't really look that good at the end of the year just because he was struggling on offense, right? But imagine if you gave that guy a line with the current offense he has. He'd be pretty close to unstoppable. I mean, I see what he's saying. Like I said, as a Colts fan, I understand what it's like to not have an O-line, as we didn't have one for like 15 years of my life. So I really get it. I mean, imagine what more Peyton Manning could have done with an O-line, or what more Andrew Luck could have done with an O-line. If Andrew Luck had an O-line, we probably wouldn't have quarterback issues right now because he'd probably still be playing. So I understand what it's like to have a guy who's hit continuously, because that has essentially been most of my life. Not recently, thankfully. But, I mean, I think that people are going to try and read too much into this, right? Us fans are going to go, okay, he had 5 words that had 6 letters that obviously corresponds to, like, people are going to come up with some kind of dumb conspiracy that he's going to get traded. Like I said, I would be very, very surprised if he got traded. More surprised than if someone like Deshaun got traded, right? Because everyone thinks he's going to get traded. The franchise is saying, no, we're not trading you. That's not going on in Seattle, right? The franchise hasn't really said anything about Russell because they don't have anything to say because he's Russell Wilson, right? But, I mean, getting sacked 47 times, that's rough. You know that it's bad when you're behind the Texans and the Eagles, who are categorically known for having bad offensive lines, especially this last year. So you know that it's rough. And I don't think that Russell Wilson would call it out if it wasn't an issue, because he doesn't really strike me as that kind of player. Just like how Deshaun Watson doesn't really strike me as the kind of player that would hold out, right? That just doesn't strike me that way. I think that the Seahawks might go and try and really land someone big now that Wilson has said this, but I don't think that Wilson's going to get traded. I mean, Seattle's his home. He's like best friends with Pete Carroll. He has DK Metcalf. He has everyone. I do think that they could go out and sign Aaron Jones in free agency and let Chris Carson go. I think that would help. But ultimately, that still doesn't solve their O-line issues. So, I mean, they're either going to have to go draft someone, they're going to have to go make a splash in free agency, they're going to have to find someone on their practice squad that they can really, pour into and them get good and make the team. I mean, I don't know. I think that they are going to do anything but trade Russell Wilson. If they trade Russell Wilson, I don't even know what I'd say, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it doesn't seem like a good idea to trade him. And I mean, unless they're really, because it seems to me like the Seahawks are a team built to win now. They don't really seem like a team that's in a position for any rebuilding. Like, they seem like if they can upgrade their defense a little bit and they can get that offensive line a little bit better, get a running back, I mean, those things can help them go a long ways the next year. So, I mean, and I don't even think their defense is that bad. They got a lot better by the end of last year.
Yeah, they're not that bad.
Like, they were rough at the beginning, but once they got things together, they were a legitimate defense. But overall, like, I don't think the Seahawks are in any position to be giving away key players. Yeah. I think your position is you want to win now. Like, you want to start winning again. The Seahawks they got their one Super Bowl, they got to the second one, lost it by a yard, and I think ever since then they've been haunted by that. I'm like, if you're the Seahawks, I think you need to go for a big off season. You need to say, I'm going to step it up this year and we're going to go big or go home. We know we have Tom Brady in this conference now, and we have some other good teams coming up.
Rodgers.
I mean, to me, it just
No
at
Breeze,
this
though,
point,
probably.
no Breeze, probably, yeah. But overall, it's just like, look, I think the Seahawks are in no position to be trading away one of the league's top quarterbacks. You need to keep him, and you need to put some protection around him. You need to put an offensive line that can let him make his plays that he was able to do back in the beginning of his career when you guys were making it to the Super Bowl and even beat that Denver team like a dead horse, literally. I mean, it was, to a lot of people, one of the most boring Super Bowls ever, but to Seahawks fans, it's probably their favorite Super Bowl they've ever had. So I'm just kind of like, look, if this is an actual trade, the Seahawks need to fire somebody.
Oh, yeah.
But
see, I have a solution.
What's that?
Just take DK Metcalf and put him at O-line. What's the worst that could happen?
Exactly. You know, he's already ripped as is. He can do it, right? And then he can also just slip out for a catch too. You know how they have like offensive linemen sometimes slip out for a pass, like Tampa tried to do against the Chiefs. Like, you know, you can just do that and you've got no problem.
Some news dropped today, some potential free agency trade news that could really be influencing Seahawks management at this point. Pro Bowl offensive lineman left tackle Orlando Brown of the Baltimore Ravens apparently wants out of Baltimore, which is really sucky if you're a Baltimore fan, because that guy, I mean, he blocks for Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's half the reason that Lamar Jackson is able to run as much as he does, right? Because they were playing him at right tackle, according to this report on Bleacher Report. And he doesn't want to because he isn't instinctually a left tackle. That's what he is. They moved him around because it was convenient, but apparently he doesn't want to do that anymore. He wants to play at left tackle. And I don't know the left tackle situation for the Seahawks. I don't know if the person who is reigning over that position now is good or not. But I'm just saying, if I'm Baltimore and I have O-line issues, I'm looking at this news and I'm going, I see you, Orlando Brown. Also, side note, if I'm a Colts fan or Colts management, I'm looking at this and going, because we need a left tackle. So that would really address so many of our needs, honestly. That would just make my life. But I'm just saying, if you're a Seahawks fan, you got to be looking at this and you have to be going, this is what we need. It's just a matter of if Seattle is going to do it, if Seattle has money, if Seattle is willing to give anything up. I mean, one of the top comments on this post is Seahawks better be on the phone right now. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, the Seahawks have considerably more O-line issues than the Colts do. So if the Colts and the Seahawks get in a bidding war, I'm not betting on the Colts giving up like 3 first-round picks for a Pro Bowl tackle, right? Because the Seahawks need more. That's just how it is. But I'm saying potential landing spot for Orlando Brown, Seahawks, also Colts. Come on, Chris Ballard. We gave up a first-rounder last year for D-line. So what's to say we can't do it again this year for O-line?
Go all in for the Super Bowl. You just need the quarterback.
We just need a quarterback. Christ.
Yeah.
Drew, come back.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Everyone tried to see.
Jacob Eason's gonna come out of the ashes and rise like a phoenix. Take our team to the Super Bowl. No, I was kidding.
All right. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting off-season news that'll be coming in the next few weeks. We're gonna be talking about it here. Don't worry, we got y'all. We have a lot of off-season plans, and I think it's going to be a very interesting one, and I'm very excited to see how it'll impact next season. Our next segment here, we've got the hot take of the week. Chelsea, you want to go off for us on it?
All right, shout out to Conlon again this week for providing this. But here we go. This has to pertain to some of the awards that were handed out on Saturday. So probably the most controversial one of that night was Aaron Donald winning Defensive Player of the Year over TJ Watt. And then all 3 of the Watt brothers proceeded to go off on Twitter and post that meme where it's like, and I took that personally. You know, they all posted that. But Conlon thinks that Aaron Donald deserved Defensive Player of the Year over TJ Watt because his position is more difficult to play. I mean, I kind of agree, though. If you look at that tweet that JJ Watt did in every major statistical category except one, TJ Watt had beaten out Aaron Donald. in all of them but one for the major statistical categories. Not all of them, obviously, but the big ones. And people were using that as leverage for the fact that they thought that TJ Watt should win the award over Aaron Donald. But let's be honest, TJ Watt is a great player, right? Even though he like broke Cam Newton, but that's fine. But he's a great player, right? He rushes off the edge, gets a ton of sacks each year, absolutely disrupts the offense. He's a good player. But Aaron Donald is Aaron Donald. He plays interior D line and he still manages to get over 10 sacks a year, which is crazy hard. So, I mean, I kind of agree with this hot take, but what do you think, Chris? Do you think that TJ Watt deserved it, or do you think that Donald deserves it? Because TJ Watt gets a whole lot more attention, at least in some games, than Donald does, because Donald plays in the interior. He gets, in the ditches, and he does all the dirty work no one else wants to do. And TJ Watt just comes off the edge and gets a sack, and honestly, it looks kind of easy, even though it's not. Not saying it's easy, but what do you think?
I mean, I agree with Aaron Donald getting it. I mean,
Me too.
I think that it's interesting because TJ Watt, he's an incredible player. To all the Steelers fans, this is no disservice to TJ Watt. He's an incredible player, I think, and he makes an impact when he's on the field. Now, let's be real. Of course, the Watt family is going to be biased towards TJ Watt. I'm not trying to say that, that's wrong. It's just the way that it is. But Aaron Donald, he is such a force on the field that you have to focus a lot of your attention on him. Now, Aaron Donald, here's the thing about stats with TJ Watt versus Aaron Donald. In my opinion, defensive tackles, they don't really stuff the stat sheet the way an outside linebacker. Well, TJ Watt is a defensive end. It says he's an outside linebacker on ESPN, but he, those guys can get more stats. They're going to get more recognition. They're going to get more looks and different things, because the thing with defensive tackle, I mean, you're literally just trying to burrow up the middle, and trying to get to the quarterback. And Aaron Donald is so good at that. He causes teams to their offensive line just shatters because of what he's doing to them. And honestly, like the Steelers defense by the end of the year was still good, but it really wasn't as good as it was. It wasn't consistent. And I think that's one of the problems. Like, I know this is an individual award, but let's be honest, like that it does take a team to look good. So Aaron Donald was a big reason the Rams were able to make it to the second round of the playoffs. And frankly, the Steelers, I mean, TJ Watt didn't have the same impact. Now, I would say that I don't think the Steelers defense was as good as the Rams defense by the end of this year. TJ Watt still makes a big impact. I'm not saying that he's not, but I mean, even in that playoff game when Aaron Donald went out with injury, I mean, he was dominating that Seattle offensive line in that playoff game, and he was doing a really good job through this whole year, and the defense was carrying that team. And that's okay. And for the Steelers, you could argue their defense carried them at the beginning of the year, but in my opinion, they just didn't look that good by the end. And I think that's one of the big reasons that Aaron Donald got this award, is because he is a Hall of Fame defensive tackle. He's been in this longer.
One of the best ever, if not.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, with 3 defensive player of the years.
And I think that TJ Watt will have his time, and he's still playing at a high level. And I think he's one of the best in the league now. But I think this year, Aaron Donald still gets it. I mean, and maybe it is unfair that it is a little bit of a team award, but in my opinion, like part of that, a huge reason that that Rams defense was so good was because of Aaron Donald, and they stayed good even through the end of the year. So
I agree
that's
with
why
you.
I would say that he deserves Defensive Player of the Year.
For sure. I mean, don't get me wrong. TJ Watt is a premier defensive player in this league. I mean, he's no pushover. If anyone was going to come close to winning this award, it was going to be him. If it wasn't going to be Donald, it was going to be him, because he had a fantastic year. But let's take a moment to think about 2 games, okay? Remember the second time the Steelers played the Browns and they rested their starters. You remember that game?
Mm-hmm.
TJ Watt didn't play in that game, right? at certain points, their defense was still dominant, right? I mean, the Browns were still playing all of their people except for, their COVID issues. But there were moments in that game where you forgot that TJ Watt wasn't even out there because their defense was so well rounded and so good that they just, put Tuitt in there, subbed him in, and he did work too. Not to say that TJ Watt doesn't make an impact, but I mean, he was rested in that game. And yes, the Steelers, they did lose. Yeah, they did lose. But I mean, they rested half their team. So of course they were going to lose. But there were still moments in that game where their defense looked just as good as ever. Like, I don't think that Watt didn't play in that game. I don't think that Minkah Fitzpatrick played in that game. I mean, they had a couple of their defensive studs not in that game, and their defense in certain moments still looked really good. Obviously, they got blown out in the first half, and then in the second half the defense came on. So not saying that they're like perfect without Watt, but they still had adequate replacements for him, and they're still able to make a huge impact without him in that game, right? So let's turn the coin on its head. Let's look at the Rams playing the Packers in the playoffs, right? Remember, Aaron Donald sustained an injury in that game, and he only came in every couple of snaps. He had, I think it was some kind of leg injury or something. I don't remember. But you took Aaron Donald out of that game, and that premier defense fell apart. Aaron Rodgers absolutely dismantled them. You put Aaron Donald back out there, and he somehow manages to get a sack while he's injured. At least I'm pretty sure he got a sack when that happened. I'm like pretty sure. But I mean, you take Aaron Donald, who is essentially the keystone of that entire defense, out of there, their whole defense crumbles. And it's not like their defense is even bad. I mean, they have Jalen Ramsey. They have some good linebackers. They have some decent other defensive linemen. It's not like their defense is just full of nobodies by Aaron Donald. But you take Donald out of there, and they just fell apart completely. And yes, obviously I asterisked the fact that they were playing Rodgers in the Super Bowl versus Baker Mayfield in the last game of the regular season. Like, obviously that matters. But I'm just saying, you took Aaron Donald out of that game, and the Packers dismantled them. And I think that that's one of the primary reasons that Aaron Donald won this game or won this award. You take him out of the game, and the whole game plan changes. That's how influential he is. Would not surprise me if TJ Watt came out with a vengeance next year, had like 20 sacks, and managed to win it. You get 20 sacks, you deserve to win it, no matter what position you play, right? That would be absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think that Donald deserved to win it this year. It's a lot hard. Like, yes, if you look at that tweet that JJ posted, right, of all the major statistical categories and how TJ was leading in all of them, that is true. But the fact that Aaron Donald even put up significant numbers in most of those categories is impressive, considering his position. Like, a lot of guys won't bat down passes. A lot of guys won't get at least 10 sacks as an interior defensive lineman, right? So while I think that TJ Watt is, arguably a top 5 defensive player in the league right now, I still don't think that he deserved to win. Aaron Donald is just too dominant. He's like the quarterback of the defense. You take him out and your team just starts sucking. That's just how it is. He's just such an influence, plays such a big role on this team, and you remove him and there's really no telling which way you're going to go because he's just that important.
Yeah. Man is a beast among men. And so is TJ Watt. And I believe that, he had a very good regular season this year, but I do think you got to wonder if part of it was because by the end of the year, the Steelers defense was still good, but not as good as the Rams. Like, let's just be honest here. They didn't look as good or they weren't quite as dominant. And you got to wonder if that plays a part of it. But I would agree and say that a big reason of that was because of Aaron Donald and the disruptions and the things he makes. And the fact that he's stat stuffing at defensive tackle, like, that is incredible. That doesn't happen normally. They just don't get many. And they don't get many sacks or batted down passes or things like that. So they definitely have their stats. I'm not saying that, but you know, they don't have the flashy stats like defensive ends tend to get. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that TJ Watt is probably the front runner to win it next year, obviously. But I mean, Aaron Donald is unarguably the best defensive tackle in the league right now. I mean, behind him, there are only a couple of guys that do the things that he does. I mean, you look at DeForest Buckner, he played a similar role on the Colts defense this year. Obviously, not as influential as Aaron Donald, but he got sacks and fumbles and tackles. And, he is one of the only guys in the league that can have stats that even come relatively close to Aaron Donald as an interior defensive lineman. So, I mean, shout out to Aaron Donald for being Aaron Donald and for, at this point, for some people, being unarguably the best defensive tackle ever. So I hope that he wins more awards, and I hope that he reigns in the Hall of Fame one day and that he is able to say, hey, I won these awards. I had these stats. I deserve to be here. I wish success on every player, even TJ Watt. I hope he goes out and absolutely destroys it next year and wins it next year. You'd always love to see guys succeed. So, but I still agree that Aaron Donald should have won it. I think TJ Watt was the obvious second place winner, though. I mean, I don't think that anyone else, I don't think anyone's arguing that anyone but Watt should be second. I mean, I think it was pretty obvious, but.
Yeah, there's this photo I'm looking at right now on Twitter. Someone put TJ Watt doesn't get this treatment, no brainer pick. It's Aaron Donald being blocked by 4, I repeat, 4 Seattle Seahawks players, all surrounding him. And I'm not saying TJ Watt doesn't get that treatment. I just think it's kind of a funny picture.
No, I agree. But let us know what you guys think.
Yeah.
Who should have won Defensive Player of the Year? Hit us up on Twitter or on Instagram. Send us a DM, comment on our photo. Let us know what you think, because this is a really controversial hot take. A lot of people thought that TJ Watt should have won. And we just happened to agree this time, but I know a lot of people don't. So let us know what you think, guys. But thanks for listening. Tune back in next Wednesday for more content. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter @_LC football_, Instagram @LaunchCodesFootball, and on Facebook and YouTube @LaunchCodesFootball. I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll see you next week.
See y'all.
Bye.